So thank you all for coming and being patient with us for this first outreach training seminar here at the AMC in Everett. The basis of this course, the whole idea behind it, is that you get a basic beginner's level for the principles and etiquettes of giving dawah, or how to explain Islam to people. Now, at this level, like we talked about before, the basic level is not about teaching a class. It's not about, hosting a dawah table or giving a tour. It's basic one-on-one interactions with your friends, your coworkers, your classmates, your neighbors. How do you explain and present Islam to the people that you interact with on a daily basis? So if you have your introduction packet that when you signed up, what is the obligation of dawah? Why is giving dawah or explaining Islam so important in Islam? So the Prophet ﷺ said, "Balligh anni walau ayah," which basically means convey on my behalf, even if it's just a single verse. So this is the responsibility of everyone who follows the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. As the final messenger, he gave us the responsibility that just as there will be no more messengers after him, instead it is his sahaba, it is his followers who are supposed to pick up the torch, pick up the flag, and continue explaining Islam until the day of judgment, inshallah ta'ala. This is our responsibility. Whether we like it or not, brothers and sisters, we are ambassadors of Islam, especially in this country, especially in this day and age. There are a lot of Muslims who give Islam a bad name, whether they're extremists that are being showcased in the news, or the regular Muslims who are not living up to the virtue and the character that our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us we should do. So it is incumbent on all of us to do as much as we can to explain Islam with clarity, with comprehension, and with mercy, because the Prophet ﷺ was rahmatan lil alameen, a mercy to all the worlds. The Quran tells us in Surah An-Nahl, "Id'u ila sabili rabbik bil hikmati wal maw'idati al hasan wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan." Invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good preaching, and debate with them in the best of ways. Now, most of the times when we talk about Islam, when we talk about our faith, it's a very personal conversation, and we are afraid to argue. We are afraid even to present Islam or explain Islam because of our weakness. Maybe we have a weakness in our knowledge, in our information. Maybe we don't have what we think is enough knowledge to tell people. And this is what this course is trying to address. The purpose of this course, inshallah, these 4 weeks, brothers and sisters, is to give you the baseline, the etiquettes and principles of explaining Islam, so that if you're in school, if you're on the bus, if you're with your neighbor, if you're with your co-workers, and a comment is made about Islam, you can jump in the conversation and represent. Not exactly present Islam, but represent Islam and explain it in a good way, inshallah ta'ala. We feel shy about explaining Islam only because of our lack of knowledge. And so we hope to remove that lack, to give the knowledge to you, inshallah ta'ala, for yourselves, for your children, and for further generations, inshallah. So we're going to highlight what should you focus on when you're talking about Islam. What are the details you should talk about? What are the details that you should not talk about? What should you focus on? Now, the first thing they have to remember is that as Muslims, as those who accept La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, we have to feel deep in our hearts with 100% conviction that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ really was a messenger sent by God. That's the beginning. Because if your iman is not there, and a person will ask you a question and maybe will make you feel, you'll shake your faith, this is a catastrophe, because this is how we lose the argument. This is how we lose the public relations. This is how we lose it. Because if we have our own doubts and someone kind of hits the soft spot in our own doubts, nothing we say will be of any benefit. Nothing we'll say will carry any conviction. We have to talk with conviction. As the Quran says, ala basiratin, with firm knowledge, with firm sight. This is the truth. Maybe I don't understand all of your question. Maybe I don't understand or I don't know the answer to your question, but it doesn't shake my faith. And that's why the first level, brothers and sisters, we have to gain the knowledge so that we have what's called al-qina', that we are solid in our belief that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ really was sent by Allah to the people. Now, One of the things that, again, is important after having this firm faith is accepting the fact that you and me and our children are part of this community. Not a single prophet was sent except that they were from the same community. They would say, Ya qawmi, ya qawmi, O my people, O my people. The Prophet Muhammad والسلام, said this, Musa السلام, said this, Hud السلام, said this, Shu'aib, Salih, all of the prophets, Nuh, Ibrahim, Lut, all of the prophets that are mentioned in the Quran, they were not outsiders. They were not coming from outside the community and then trying to preach or teach that community. They were raised among that community. They were a part of that community. And this is important for us, especially for the ones who are sitting in the front, the youth. You know, some of us who are sitting in the back, we're immigrants. We came from another country. So it's very easy for someone to dismiss the elders in this audience and say, you know, go back where you came from. You don't belong here. They can't say that to you. They can't say that to you. You were born here. You belong here. This is your land. And these are your people. That has to be inside your head and inside your heart. These are your people. When you're in school and your friends say, hey, let's go do this and that, and you're like, nah, man, that's haram. And you just give them the cold shoulder. No, it's not about that. All of the messengers, even the messengers who were sent to the depraved societies, like Shu'aib and Hud and Lut, they still loved their communities. They were looking out for their communities. They cared about their communities. If your friends want to go clubbing and you don't, and you know it's haram, explain to them why it's bad for them. You care about them. If they're going to go do something which is inappropriate, it's not about, no, I'm not about that. You do what I do, what you want to do, and I do what I want to do. There has to be that mercy in the heart because we're a part of this community. And no da'wah will be successful if the heart is not connected to the one that you're giving da'wah to. Let me say that again. Write it down. No da'wah will be successful unless the heart is connected to the one who is listening to the da'wah. If you're not connected, if you're just preaching to make the hujjatul baligha and then he can go to hell after that, you don't care, that's not da'wah. That's not da'wah, brothers and sisters. That is not the rahmah, the mercy, the compassion that our messenger had. Subhanallah, when he was stoned at Ta'if and the angels came to him and said, Ya Rasulullah, if you want, we can take these two mountains and crush them on this city that has hurt you. And he said, no. Maybe some of their children will accept the message. This is our outlook that we need to have, inshallah ta'ala. Now, the next thing I want to talk about here, inshallah ta'ala, is many times da'wah is seen as a script. You say this, you say this, you say that. If somebody asks you this, you say this. If somebody asks you that, you say this. No. Dawah has to be customized to the person you're talking to. You have to know the background of who you're talking to. You have to understand where they're coming from. And this is one of the wisdoms why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always had the messenger come from the community in which they were to be the recipients of the da'wah. Allah could have made one person be a da'i, one messenger, one prophet, alayhi salam, one of the prophets, and they go from city to city to city to city to city to city, and they're just opening up all the futuhat. That has never happened. Even the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, it was said in the Quran, so he can give the huda to al-Qura, to this Qura, to these people, because those are his people. Why? Because each messenger has to understand the context, the background, the civilization that they're talking to. This is one of the keys to understanding how to give effective da'wah, how to give da'wah that touches the heart. You have to know where the people are coming from. Like, for example, you don't talk to your sister the way you talk to your mom. You don't talk to your mother the way you talk to your aunt. You don't talk to your daughter the way you talk to your friend. You always tweak what you're saying depending on who you're saying it to. Likewise, when you start a conversation, whether it's at work or with your neighbor while you're watering the lawn, or on the bus, or with your classmate between classes, you have to see where's the background, where they're coming from, so you can modify and tweak and fine-tune the message so it gets to their heart, so it can actually be understood and click in their mind. So now I'm going to share with you a few slides that I actually received from Dr. Sherman Jackson at the RIS Let's go through real quickly. How are we going to do this? We talked about why dawah. We're going to talk about the context of dawah. Okay, what are the underlying principles of this society? Now, I grew up in this country, so I can only speak to the American context. If you want to go to Qatar, if you want to go to Great Britain, if you want to go to India, if you want to go to Japan, I can't help you because while there are some similarities, my experience is for this context, this American life. And that's what I'll be talking about, inshallah, the underlying principles of society that we have to keep in mind when we talk about Islam to someone else. And then finally, we'll talk about the manners of the da'wah worker. What should the da'i, what are the attributes of the one who's giving da'wah? Now, the next few slides I'm going to show you, they're from Dr. Sherman Jackson. And I saw this slideshow that he gave, or this presentation that he gave at the RIS convention in 2015. And I was so struck by them that I asked him if I could, with his permission, could I take these ideas and use them in my own teaching? He said, sure, you can. So I want you guys to pay attention and think. You don't have to say anything out loud, but think about the question that is going to come next. Dr. Jackson said, you take a look at this. What is in the red box? Don't call out. Just look, think, what is in the red box? And then he said, okay, what is in this red box? Does everyone see that? This was brilliant. He says, you know, when you first look at it, you see letters. So you say, oh, in the red box is a G. But in another context, in another set of surroundings, you see numbers. So you call it a 9. He said, this is like explaining Islam to people and you don't understand the context. It's the same thing in the box. It's the same character that's in the box. But the context has changed. And so the interpretation of the one who's listening to you will change. If you show this person this character, this little graphic inside the box, and you're talking as if they're in a number, as if they're numbers, but he's thinking that they're letters, is there going to be misunderstanding or not? Yes, of course. And that's why you have to know, where is he or she? What context do they live in? And that way you will be able to properly convey the same character, the same message, brothers and sisters. We're not changing the deen. It's the same message, but we're putting it in the context that the recipient, the receiver, can catch it, understand it, and internalize it. Now, let's move on and actually talk about, what are we talking about in the worldview? The worldview of the Western society. What are the principles of the society in which we live? What is the context of the dawah that we're giving in this country, in this day and age? What I'm giving a talk about right now, it's not going to be for all countries. And what I'm talking about right now, it's not going to be for all time. Okay? There's a specific context. And this is why Allah sent messengers locally to each different community. So we're going to talk about, this is again, Dr. Sherman Jackson from RIS 2015. What are some of the principles that are in the back of the people's mind when they ask you questions about Islam? So that when you answer to their context, not from your culture, not from your background, but from theirs. So the first one that we're going to talk about, the most important thing, if you get nothing else out of this presentation, if you fall asleep in the next 5 minutes, please remember this. Autonomy is a concept that is totally permeating this society. What does this mean? What does autonomy mean? Basically, it's the idea that a person, the individual human being, is the ultimate authority. That the authority to do what you want to do, say what you want to say, is vested in the person, in the human being, in the individual. Putting it another way, it means that there is no master above each individual. This concept fills the society that we live in right now. Now, why does this make a difference? Because if the ultimate authority is with the individual, is with the one person, that means there's nothing above them. No one has the right to tell that person what to do or what not to do. But as a matter of fact, no good, pious, observant Muslim, no observant Jew, no observant Christian would actually agree with this. I've talked in interfaith circles, And the evangelical Christians, the Catholic Christians, the conservative Jews, the traditional Jews, they have the same problem. They say there's a problem in our educational system. They're teaching our kids that each of you is the master of themselves. No one has the right to take something from you unless you give them that right. But all of the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, start with the fundamental principle that we owe a debt of gratitude to our Creator. Write that down. The fundamental principle of all the Abrahamic faiths is that we owe a debt of gratitude to our Creator. Therefore, this debt of gratitude means the authority of what to do, what we should not do, that belongs to God. That belongs to Allah. He does have the right to say do or don't do. He has the right to tell us how to live and how we should not live. What is appropriate for us to do or to say and what we should not say. He has that right. And this is not just, like I said, this is not just Islam. This is all the Abrahamic faiths. What does it mean when we say 17 times a day or more, Maliki Yawmiddin? Maliki Yawmiddin means the owner or the king or the master of the day of judgment. What does Dain, Yawmiddin, the day of Deen, what does Deen really mean? It comes from the root word of Dain, which means debt. So that means the day of judgment is the day that the debt of gratitude that you owe to your maker is going to be paid up, either successfully or unsuccessfully. It's the day of debt. It's the day of recompense. It's the day where Allah comes to collect his debt from every human being. Do you see what that means? That means that at the very basis, if Allah says we should do this or commands us to do that, commands us not to do that, we owe him obedience. And this is not just Islam. Christianity and Judaism also have as their number one axiom, their first principle. We didn't create ourselves. We are not the masters of our own destiny. We have a maker to whom we owe gratitude. And Islam is one of the few religions that actually says that God, Allah, has the right to be worshipped. That's his right. It is his right to be worshipped. Not on our terms, not the way we want to play or the way we want to do, but the way he commands and desires for us to do. That's why we have in the Quran, Inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alameen. What does that mean, brothers and sisters? It means verily my prayer, my sacrifice, my living, my dying, all of it is for Allah, the Lord of the worlds. And this is the first principle in Islam. So why do we have to know this when we're talking to people? So that's the theory. Let's bring it down to the actual reality when you're talking to people in the hallway, or you're talking to your neighbor, as you're walking your cat or your dogs, if you have dogs, or they're walking their dog and you're walking your children, because that happens a lot. What do you do when we're talking to people? What it basically means, if somebody asks you, sister, why are you wearing hijab? The correct answer is not so men don't look at me. The answer, why we have the beard, why do we pray 5 times a day, why don't we eat pork, why don't we have boyfriends and girlfriends? Yes, there's a wisdom behind it, but the reason why we do it is because God said so. All right? Everything halal and haram, everything that we do and not do, all of the commandments, all of the lifestyle, everything in Islam, it all comes down to that we owe Allah a debt of gratitude for him creating us. And for that reason, if he says this is what we should do, we should do it. And if this is what we should not do, we should not do it. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wassalam, there is nothing that is good and beneficial for you except I taught you to do it. And there is nothing that is harmful to you except I told you to avoid it. The Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam came, he was sent, he was commissioned by Allah to explain to his community and the general community around, how can you live a pure, God-conscious life? How can you live a life which is good for you in this dunya and in the hereafter? How can you live this worldly life so you can successfully prepare for the next life that's coming, right? This is something that if you talk to someone who is secular, if you talk to someone who is liberal, they don't have that peace. They're going to talk about all these other things. A simple example, oh, why don't you eat pork? Oh, because you didn't eat pork because it has diseases in it. Well, they can genetically engineer a pig to not have any of those diseases. So does that make it halal? No. There's a wisdom behind the prohibition, but it's not the reason behind the prohibition. Autonomy. Autonomy says that the people, they think that there's no master above them. And this is directly contrasted with Islam's premise. Premise means the first principle. Premise means the first foundation, that we owe our Creator a debt of gratitude, and therefore we accept Him as our ultimate authority. We accept Him as our ultimate authority. So when people ask you, why this and why that? Why do you Muslims do this? Why do you Muslims not do that? And it's about something that actually is in Islam. Later on, inshallah, in the next 2-3 weeks, we'll talk about, how to answer questions about jihad and what's going on in world events and that. But for right now, if somebody asks you about something that actually is a teaching of Islam, like the hijab or the prayer or the fasting or the gender etiquettes or any of those, the first thing you have to tell them, you have to set up the context. You have to bring them out of their context of autonomy to your context of God's or Allah's authority. You have to take them, you have to transition them. You have to take them from this room to that room, from this context to that context. You have to explain to them that, number one, we believe in God. We believe in Allah, that He created us with certain obligations. And we believe there's a day of judgment where He is going to hold us accountable on whether we fulfilled those obligations. And we believe that Muhammad, the son of Abdullah in 7th century Arabia, may peace be upon him, was really a messenger from God, and he taught us what those expectations and obligations are. It's 3 steps: Tawheed, Akhirah, Risala. You tell them that there is a God, and we believe in God, and He has the ultimate authority. You tell them in the beginning, we don't believe in autonomy. We believe that the ultimate authority is with our Creator. Number 2, there's a day of judgment. That's Akhirah, where He, our Creator, to whom we owe a debt of gratitude, is going to hold us accountable on whether we fulfilled those obligations or not. And number 3, the important part is Risala. We believe that Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, peace be upon him, really was from God. And he taught what are God's expectations. Therefore, one of the things that we were taught, modesty, gender etiquettes, you should honor and dignify your mind and don't fry it with drugs or alcohol. That we have to stand 5 times a day, break our worldly routine to offer thanks to our Creator, ask for forgiveness, ask for guidance. You see how now the narrative will click with whoever you're talking to. Because if you start talking about the wisdoms behind hijab, or the wisdoms behind the prayer, it makes you feel spiritually uplifted. Or the wisdom behind fasting. Yes, the people who are diabetic or who are almost diabetic, they know fasting is beneficial. We know that prayer is beneficial. We know that the gender etiquettes are beneficial. We know that avoiding and not, we know that all the rules of Islam are beneficial, but they're not the reason. So if you explain why Muslims do this based on the benefits or the wisdom behind the teachings, you're going to get caught in endless arguments. Well, what about this? Well, what about this? What if the pig is genetically engineered? Well, what if there's no men? What if the men are, genetically engineered? You're not going to go anywhere. What if you have, I can take a drug and it makes me feel just as spiritually high as your prayer? You will get into this kind of argument, brothers and sisters. Don't go there. Number 1, tell them about Tawheed. Number 2, tell them about Akhirah and how they're related. And number 3, Risala, that the books and the messengers came to explain those obligations that we have. Tawheed, Akhirah, Risala. So that when we meet our Creator, we are in good standing with Him. That's why we pray. That's why we fast. That's why we hold to good moral ethics and values. That's why we don't play around. We don't do drugs. We don't drink. The reason you do it is because God said so. Okay? When you use this chain of logic, then you can overcome the barrier of autonomy. then you can get past the assumptions that a person has about why human beings do anything. It's not maslaha. It's not because of your own interest. It's not because I will gain some benefit. Yes, you'll gain a benefit in the hereafter, not in this life. There is a benefit in this life, but that's not the reason why we do that. Islam and Judaism and Christianity, they all say we owe a debt of gratitude, and it is Allah's right that we worship Him, and we worship Him on His terms, not ours. So if He says do, we do. We hear and we obey. One of the things that the higher authority expects me to do is this, 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 and this. That's why we say Tawheed, Akhirah, Risala, and then say one of the things that the Prophet told us we should do or not do is this, alayhi salatu wassalam. All right. Let's move on, inshallah. So Muslims believe that God is the master above us, and this is the reason why we do what we do. What is the next part? The next part is a little bit easy. I'm not going to spend so much time on it. It's individualism. What does individualism mean? It basically means that the right of the individual person is higher than the rights of the community or the society. And even most traditional religions, including the Eastern religions like Hinduism and Buddhism and Taoism, they don't believe this. However, this is something that is in this society. This society holds that it holds to the ideals of individual choice. So there's an emphasis on being self-centered, on looking out for number one, doing what is good for you, right? Prioritizing yourself above others. This is one of the underlying principles of Western society. Self-interest. But even the Eastern religions, the non-Abrahamic religions, don't hold to this. Islam and Christianity and Judaism and Hinduism and Buddhism, they all contrast. They say, no, the ideal is community welfare, that the emphasis is on the society, that you prioritize others over yourself. This is the golden rule. None of you truly believes until you wish for your brother what you wish for yourself. Right? Or the Christians say, do unto others as you would have be done unto you. Right? This is a concept in all of the faiths, all the traditional religions. But this is not the context that most modern Western societies have. Western societies don't have that. They have the idea of individualism. Individualism means if I have to choose between the good of the society and the good of the individual, I take the choice of the individual so long as there is no harm on the society. But individual gets in the way of the understanding of the deep understanding of Islam. All right? The general welfare, maslahat al-am. This is actually one of the principles of Sharia. Maslahat al-am is how we derive Islamic rulings. And some of these rulings, they seem very strange to Western audiences because we don't say everyone can do whatever they want. It's always tempered by what is good for the society. Now, the third principle, right? We talked about autonomy is number one. We talked about individualism is number two. The third one is secularism. Now, secularism is, I think most people understand what that means, but let's talk about how does it contrast with Islam. It basically says that the ethics or the rules and regulations that we have to be divorced from religion. That means any law, any rule in society has to have a non-religious justification. That's the idea behind secularism, okay? That any rule or law, all laws should have non-religious justifications. The idea here is that if you want to say that something is right or wrong, you have to find some kind of non-religious, secular reason or justification for calling that wrong. And again, as Muslims, this is not something that we ascribe to. Even though we admit as Muslims, we believe that there is a secular, worldly benefit and wisdom behind all of the halal and the haram, behind all of the do's and the don'ts. We understand that God is our creator. He is the most wise. He cares about us more than our own mothers. And so he's giving guidelines and rules which are for our own good. We believe that. However, the highest wisdom, the highest authority, like we talked about in autonomy, is the one who dictates what is good for us, what is bad for us. So there will be rules, there will be laws that a secular person doesn't understand. Why are you doing this? And we have to go back again. You have to explain. Just as I accept my Creator as my ultimate authority, I accept my Creator's wisdom and laws and guidelines as my own life guidelines. This is what this is about. Our Creator's laws are protections and guidelines for success, even if we don't understand or see the benefits behind them. So we believe that taking a break 5 times a day and praying is good for us, even if we don't see a benefit to it. More importantly, when we talk about laws, so the prayer is kind of a personal relationship between you and your Lord, but there are laws that people will ask about. Why does Islamic law say this? Why does Islamic law say that? That's really harsh. That's really whatever. That's really this. How do you explain that? You say, no, there is a wisdom behind it, and we accept that wisdom as part of faith, as part of accepting that we are not autonomous, that we accept the authority of our Creator. That means we also accept His wisdom to tell us what we should and should not do. So, for example, when we talk about how men and women are supposed to interact, this is a very big, the most common question about Islamic law. Why do you have these gender etiquettes? Why do you have this segregation or this separation between the men and the women? That's so barbaric. That's so 7th century. Just, be modern, be realistic, and just move on with your life. No, it's not just that we don't want anything bad physically to happen. It's that we don't want anything bad spiritually to happen. That we don't want to have that internal temptation that breaks apart families, right? You have to show them that there is a benefit, there is a wisdom. A lot of what is considered evil or wrong or immoral in society, they use this as a litmus test. They say, what is the physical harm? What's the problem? What if I have a boyfriend? What if I have a girlfriend? We're not doing anything. That's what they say, isn't it? Right? Okay, the youth here, they can nod their heads. Maybe the adults, they don't know this. But the youth know. They get questioned about this. What's wrong? Right? But that's not how, when you're explaining to somebody that we accept practices and laws based on their spiritual benefit, not just their physical benefits, right? And this transition actually happened in this country. If you were to go back in time 100 years to 1920, it used to be that if a woman had a child, had a baby outside of wedlock, it was a big scandal in the town, in the community. She couldn't show her face again. She had to go move. But then the times changed, and the morality started being edited and updated. But then when they evolved and they say, okay, what if she does something like that? That's on her. Why is there a law about this? There's no physical harm. And that's why this kind of behavior nowadays, it's not a punishable crime like it was even in this country. Adultery and fornication and having a child out of wedlock, that was actually a punishable crime in this country 100 years ago. It was. It was a crime, not just a sin. It was a crime. Why do we still hold that it is a crime? Because Islam says it's not just about the physical harm. It's about the spiritual harm. It's about the social harm. All of these aspects, they're not non-religious. There is a religious morality. And the Christians and the Jews, they have this too. You can talk to any of the evangelical Christians, any of the conservative Jews, and they have the same issue in that they have to fight really hard to train their kids. Don't follow the mainstream when it comes to this kind of social interacting, right? That's not what we believe. And so if you want to answer these kind of questions, you can't just say, oh, it's haram. No, you have to talk about the social impact, the spiritual impact. It's about having a heart. If you go down this path, you will have a heart that is no longer soft and ready to receive the light of guidance from its Creator. It's about a heart becoming so hard that you no longer feel shame. This is a real issue in Islam, but it's not an issue in the secular world. There is a real psychological harm that people have. They're hurt, their feelings are hurt, and the next time they get married, they're not going to be as attached. And again, this is going to domino effect into the families not being as strong, which domino effects into the children not being properly raised or coming from broken homes, which has so many social consequences. It's all connected. Do you see what I'm trying to say here? That when you talk about the laws of Islam, realize that who you're talking to only thinks on the physical level. They don't think about the social or the spiritual level. But Islam is not just about having physical well-being. It's not just materialism. It's about having social well-being, spiritual well-being, social well-being, and psychological well-being. It's a complete picture. It's the holistic human being. It's all aspects of our humanity. And it is a crime against humanity to reduce the human being to just a physical machine with physical wants and desires and only has to worry about the physical consequences. All right. Let's see, because we're almost out of time here. Let's continue to the second part. The last part we're going to talk about is scientism. Scientism. So this is an aspect of Western society which is very prevalent. What it basically means is that the background says it's only real if it can be physically seen, felt, or measured. Okay? This is scientism. Scientism is basically only materialism, that only that which is physical is real. So as we began to hint about in the previous section, there's more than just physical harm. There's spiritual, social, psychological harm. More importantly, we know in Islam that one of Islam's first principles is that ultimate reality includes the unseen aspects. Surah Al-Baqarah begins with this: Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. The first thing that Allah mentions, Alif Lam Mim, this is the book in which there is no doubt, a guidance to those who have God consciousness. And the first attribute of being conscious of God is believing in the unseen. That there are angels, there's heaven, there's hell, there's a spiritual price for every sin we commit. There's a social price for every transgression we commit, even if nobody catches you, even if the cameras were off. This is what you have to address. When we talk to people about Islam, we have to realize that if you talk about there's a spiritual harm from doing this or this, if they don't believe in the spirit, if they don't believe in the unseen, they don't understand why that's a harm. They say, well, your heart is pumping, your brain is firing its neurons, you're all good. Your limbs are moving, you're alive. There's no soul. There's no understanding of the intangible. There's no understanding of the unseen. But as a Muslim, or even a Christian or a Jew who is observant, who's conservative, who tries to hold to their traditions, they believe in a soul. We believe in souls. We believe that there are things that science cannot measure. We believe that there is a reality that influences the physical, even if it can't be measured or touched in the physical. All right, so let's review real quickly. The principles of the context of Dawah, the principles of Western society: autonomy, and then we have individualism, and then we have secularism, and finally we have scientism. Autonomy, the idea that there's no master above the individual. Individualism, that the individual takes precedence over the society. Secularism, that any law has to have some kind of non-religious justification. And scientism, that nothing is real except what can be physically measured. All right? So now we're going to actually get into, please, this is going to be, we're going to have a quiz on this, inshallah, at the end of today, after the Q&A. Now we're going to talk about the manners of the da'i. What are the manners of someone who's giving the da'wah? Now, this is a list that I actually put together by Sheikh bin Baz, so I'm going to summarize it for you here. You can all look online if you want to get more details. Bi'iznillahi ta'ala. So the first aspect we talk about is when you're talking about Islam, when you're going to be explaining anything, the first thing you need to do is renew your intentions. It is very, very important that you do this with sincerity, that the intention is that you're bearing witness for Allah, for your Creator. It's not to win an argument. This is the most important. This is very important when you're talking to people about Islam. You're not trying to win an argument. You're not trying to win a debate. Debates don't work. They didn't work at the time of the prophets, and they didn't work this time. Winning an argument does not establish truth, and it doesn't touch the hearts. Let me say that again, because this is actually a very good life lesson for our youth. Winning an argument doesn't establish truth, and it doesn't reach the hearts. Okay? So you have to make sure that when you're talking about Islam, when you are speaking, you're not trying to one up the person that you're speaking to. Faith or Iman, it blossoms in the heart and then it is accepted by the mind. It's not the other way around. Some people, they get into the wrong idea that if I can just make them understand or be convinced mentally, then it'll trickle down to the heart. No, that never has been the way it works. Faith begins in the heart and then it's accepted by the mind. When you start debating, what you're trying to do is you're trying to attack or address the person's mind first, and then hoping that somehow it's going to get into his heart. Sincerity means that you are representing, conveying the message with the mercy that the Prophet, may peace be upon him, exemplified. That he's trying to reach the hearts of the Quraysh. He's trying to reach out to the hearts. And after they accept, then the logical arguments begin. The Quran does both. It addresses the heart and it addresses the mind. But always, you can ask our ulama, it always goes for the heart first. Because hearts are how you change behavior, not minds. Another aspect of sincerity is that when you're talking about Islam, don't let it degenerate into some kind of personal debate where somebody says something about the Prophet, ﷺ, or he says something about Islam, and you take it personally, you get all upset. So many times, we as a Muslim community, in this day and age, we're being led like a bull by the nose. They say something incendiary, something really hot to get you riled up and get you upset, and they just want to get a reaction out of you. Just like bullies, they just tease you, so they get a reaction out of you. Don't take it personally. When you're talking about Islam, you're just conveying the message. It is not your job to convert. It is not your job to convince. You just express, you just explain. Ma alayka illa al-balagh. If the Prophet himself, ﷺ, was not commanded or not obligated to do anything except convey the message, how can we be expected to do anything more? Represent with a cool heart. Keep your head on top. Stay cool. Don't take it personal. Because then, when you start taking it personal, the emotions get involved and you will say something not out of the sake of Allah, but for the sake of your own ego. And that totally demolishes sincerity, totally demolishes your intention. Okay. The next aspect is knowledge. It is okay to say, I don't know, especially for our youth. Maybe you haven't been studying Islam. Maybe you haven't gone to a Sunday school or an Islamic school. If somebody asks you a question and you're stumped, it's perfectly acceptable to say, I don't know. Let me go look it up. I'll get back to you. Don't start making things up or try to justify, which is even worse. Don't try to justify, well, you know, this is bad too. And that. Don't do that, brothers and sisters. Be humble. Realize your own limitations of knowledge. We have these seminars so we can help you gain that knowledge. But if somebody asks you a question of which you have no knowledge, it's perfectly okay to say you don't know. This is something that we have to this will help you to keep a level head, to keep cool when you're talking to people about Islam. Because nowadays, people just want to see a fight. You have troll wars on Facebook where people make really nasty comments trying to see who's going to respond to them, because those are the kind of comments that go viral. People will be in the schoolyard and they'll just say something to see if they can get a rise of you. Even in a corporate, I work in corporate America, I work in a company, and sometimes we're getting a drink of water or getting our coffee, and they'll make a comment, they just want to see what is that Muslim going to react with. They're bored. They just want to see the reaction. Don't go there. If you don't know the answer, it's perfectly okay to say you don't know. Ignorance and wishful thinking does not build. It only causes corruption. It does not bring about reformation. This is kind of a general rule. Ignorance and wishful thinking doesn't build anything. It doesn't add any value. All it can do is corrupt or undermine. So if you have the knowledge, give it, whatever you have. If you don't, say, I'll get back to the person. I'll come back to you later. Look it up. And this will be how you train yourself, how you can do your own personal development. So it's a win-win situation. You haven't said anything wrong to the person who's asking the question, and Allah has opened up for you an opportunity to develop yourself, to self-improve. Okay. Now we're going to talk about gentleness. Gentleness is the third aspect of the characteristics of a da'i. Every messenger, may peace and blessings be upon them, since the beginning, has always been admonished by God, by Allah, to give the message in a merciful and gentle way. The most famous example in the Quran is how Allah instructed Moses alayhi salam, to say a gentle word, a soft word to Pharaoh. A soft word to Pharaoh. Brothers and sisters, no matter how annoying your atheist coworker or neighbor is, they're not worse than Pharaoh. And you're not better than Musa alayhi salatu wassalam. So let's keep things real. When you talk to people about Islam, be patient, be gentle. Do not be hasty or harsh or argumentative. And actually, this is how we address the matters of the heart. And this is not just for talking to non-Muslims. This is a very important part. What if you're talking to your brother who doesn't pray? What if you're talking to your son who's getting into trouble? What if you're talking to your uncle who's older than you and he has some shady haram business practices? Don't be hasty. Don't be judgmental. Don't be harsh. Be gentle. This concept of da'wah is for all people, Muslim and not Muslim. Because this is how our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us. Yani subhanallah, we have the famous hadith. There is a man who came into the Prophet's mosque and started urinating in it. And the companions, they took out their sword. They're about to go behead the guy. They were like, how can you do this? He said, no, let him finish. And then very gently, very calmly, the Prophet ﷺ said, this is not the place for that. This is not the place for that. What would happen if somebody did that in this masjid? Or any other masjid that you know about? Unfortunately, the reaction would not be the way of the noble Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We elevate our Prophet, but we don't try to emulate him. And this is the most important aspect of the Prophet we should be trying to emulate. Be gentle. When you're talking to people, you have to come from a place of compassion, because that's how you reach the heart. When you're antagonistic, people's mental defenses will come up, and even if they become intellectually convinced, you put them in their place, they can't argue with you, their heart and their ego will reject it. So you've lost them. Even if you tell that person, what's up? If you do it in a harsh way, belittling them, they will not accept it, they will not take it internally. The Prophet ﷺ said, "O Allah, whoever is a guardian over any affair of my ummah and he is gentle with them, then be gentle with him. And whoever is a guardian over any affair of my ummah and he is harsh with them, then be harsh with him." So it's in your own benefit, brothers and sisters. Be gentle with others so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be gentle with you. And the final aspect of the manners of a da'i is to set an example. Now, what does it mean to set an example? Setting an example, it means you should act according to what you're calling to. That's kind of what we call the basic surface meaning. Okay? The basic surface meaning of this. It also means that we really internalize the ayah in the Quran when Allah is amazed at the believers. "O you who believe, why do you say which you do not do? Hateful in the sight of Allah that you say which you do not do." So we need to get rid of this hypocrisy from our hearts, that we practice what we preach. We should be practicing what we preach. However, that's the surface meaning. There's a deeper meaning that I want to share with you, brothers and sisters. One of the toughest things, and I'm talking to everybody here now, the youth, the elderly, the brothers, the sisters. One of the excuses that people give for not giving da'wah, for not explaining Islam, for not jumping into a conversation about Islam and giving your 2 cents about it, is they say, well, I can't talk about Islam. I'm no better than that. I need to pray my 5 times a day. I can't talk about Islam. I do this, I do that, or I don't do this, or I don't do that. This is a wrong way of thinking. We don't wait until we're perfect and then start telling people about Islam. Every single da'i, every single imam, every single sheikh, we have our weaknesses, brothers and sisters. I'm no better than you. Sheikh is no better than you. Imam is no better than you. Maulana is no better than you. Every one of us is struggling with our own fitna. Don't let your own shortcomings be a barrier between you giving your 2 cents. Look at this. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he accepted Islam. He didn't know that much, and he pulled in 6 of his friends who were among the 10 who were promised paradise because he conveyed what he knew with his heart to those that he loved, that he wanted them to be saved as well. Now, we know that Abu Bakr had a very high moral standard. He was one of the few people in Mecca, he didn't worship idols. He didn't actually drink. He had his own set of virtue. How about Umar ibn al-Khattab? Okay, he was very strong, but he had a really nasty temper. We all know this. It's famous. He was a harsh man. He used to beat people. He buried his daughter alive. He was no angel. He accepted Islam, his tears started falling, and he started giving da'wah to the people that he knew. He started calling out to the people of Quraysh. He used to say, just as I used to beat up the Muslims that had converted, I want to have a fight with anyone in Quraysh who wants to, right? This is how he felt so guilty. He wanted to make up for what the injustices that he did to the people who accepted Islam. He was challenging Quraysh, do to me what I have done to others. Do you see? But not all of the Sahaba, Ridwanullah alayhim, not all of them were at that level of Abu Bakr and Ali and Uthman and Umar. There were Sahaba who were alcoholics. There were Sahaba who they were very, they had a fitna with women. There were Sahaba who had fitna with money or with their arrogance or with their, they were so proud of their lineage and their heritage and, who their parents were and the tribes they came from. All of the Sahaba had their own fitna. They were not angels. And yet, it did not stop them from spreading the Islam, from teaching others. Why is that important? I'll tell you why. If you get into the mentality that I can't talk about Islam, that I can't tell people about Islam until I'm quote unquote perfect, you're beginning to go down the road that we see the extremists in the Middle East doing right now. Think about it. What is it that makes the people of ISIS or Al-Qaeda or Boko Haram or whatever group you have out there that's causing all the headlines? They think they got it. They think they're all done. They think, khalas, they're part of the Jannah group. And they look down at other people who are not Muslim or Muslims that they think are not good enough. This is a disease of arrogance. Allah keeps the fitna in your life. Allah keeps you making sins. So you stay humble and return to Him and you don't get arrogant and big head. That you never have this ghurur, this heedlessness, this false self-appreciation of yourself. I got it. Let me show you what I got. No. You have to show the people that we can come in together. Why is it? Think about it again. For ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, are they winning converts for Islam? Are people running to join them? Are they winning or are they fighting to get? No, people look at, they're crazy. I can't do that. You do this, and this. I can't do that. No one can relate to them because they hold such a high standard of strictness. The Prophet ﷺ said, Tayassaru, la ta'assaru. Don't be harsh. Be easy. The deen, ad-deenu yusr. And more importantly, the people that you talk to about Islam, they have to see you as real human beings, that you're struggling. Islam is not a destination, brothers and sisters. It's a journey. Islam is not a destination. You're never all set. Not me, not you, not Sheikh, not Imam so-and-so, not Maulana so-and-so. Islam is a journey. It is a lifelong struggle to align your will with the Creator's will. It's a lifelong struggle to do that which pleases our Creator and avoid that which displeases Him. It doesn't matter if you got hair on your head or you're bald. If you got a big beard and it's white or you don't. It doesn't matter if you're young or old, learned or unlearned, male or female. No one is done until the day the angel of death takes you out of this world. People have to see that. People have to see that. You say, people ask you about Islam, you say, well, here's what Islam says. Oh, wait a minute, you don't do that. Yes, I don't. I'm weak. But I should. That is so powerful to people because they realize I don't have to there's not a checklist and then I can become Muslim. You say, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, you're a Muslim. You're a Muslim. You've accepted to walk this path to your Creator through its ups and its downs, through its left turns and its back alleys. You're joining the group that is seeking wajh rabbihim. This is the point. That yes, you want to set an example, but don't let shaitan trick you that you're not good enough, that you're not there yet. Who are you to speak? Who are you to talk? You're the people who are talking just like all the other Sahaba and the Tabi'een and the Tabi'een. There are scholars among the Tabi'een or the Tabi'een, they have said, إِذَا ذُكِرَ الصَّالِحُونَ فَأُفٍّ لِي وَتُفٍّ. I believe this was Sufyan al-Thawri, correct me if I'm wrong. He said, if people are mentioning the Salihin, the ones who are righteous, then just on me and just spit me out. And this is one of the major scholars of Islam. He didn't have this ghurur. He still saw his own weaknesses. One of the Sahaba, I forget his name right now, he said, if you don't, he was coming out of the prayer and the people were saying, MashaAllah, and, they were giving him madh. And he said, be quiet, because those who give praise to da'wah is the one who's trying to follow, it's a fitna. Wallahi, if you know about me what I know about myself, you would hit me with your sandals. So the point is, yes, live up to what, try to walk the walk as well as talk the talk, but wallahi, do not be harsh on yourselves that I can't talk about this because I still got this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem. Every one of us has fitna. Done. Every ibn Adam khata wa khayrul khata'in at-tawwabin. Every son of Adam, every daughter of Eve is a sinner, but the best of sinners are those who repent. So remember that. You can't be an instant Muslim. It takes time, it takes tarbiyah, it takes development, it takes jihadun nafs, it takes effort. There is no building that is built except it takes time and effort. Likewise, there is no qalbun salim except you have to put in the time and the effort. So, let's review. The manners of the da'wah worker, those who are talking about Islam. Number 1, sincerity. Number 2, knowledge. Number 3, gentleness. And number 4, set an example. All right? So we're going to go ahead and stop here. My lecture is over. Thank you for your patience. We went a little bit